It was past 10 p.m., and my son was staring at the clock in irritation. It's this late already? Where could Susan be going? At that moment, the front door opened, and Susan came home. Sorry. I lost track of time having fun with friends. Susan, who appeared drunk, had a bright red face. She entered the house with a smile and staggered down the hallway. Then she went to bed without even taking a bath. The son glanced at a piece of paper visible from Susan's bag and was shocked. What's this? A receipt from a members-only bar? Spent $1,000 there. Where did the money come from? The son, reprimanding me, suddenly checked the savings I had hurriedly stored in the dresser. I found that the envelope, which had been carefully hidden with $3,000, was empty. Overwhelmed with shock and despair, I sat down on the floor. Desperately, my son shouted at Susan, "Hey, don't sleep, explain properly." However, Susan, blissfully unaware and tipsy, continued to sleep. Story of Beth. I lost my husband 7 years ago and have been living with my 40-year-old son. My son, Joshua, is sincere and dutiful, seemingly uninvolved in romantic relationships. To my knowledge, my son never had a girlfriend and never spoke of marriage or love. After my husband passed away, I was worried about my son's future, who was in his mid-30s and only commuting between home and work. Unbeknownst to me, my son was seriously considering marriage. Last year, he met a woman his age through a marriage agency and got married. Now, I am living happily with my son and his wife. My daughter-in-law, Susan, is cheerful and bright. Mother, the pancakes are ready. Would you like to join me? Susan often makes homemade sweets for me. Your pancakes are delicious, Susan. And I put a lot of whipped cream in these pancakes. Impressed, I praise her, and Susan smiled proudly. Her smile was like that of a child being praised by their parents, conveying a warm sense of happiness. Watching the lovely Susan reminds me of the day my son brought her home. Mom, Susan is a truly wonderful person. That's why I want to cherish her forever. My son said this with a bit of shyness. Now, I even want to see Susan smile more than my son's. Susan, who is like a daughter to me and has grown close to me, and I have had a good relationship. However, recently, I've been a bit concerned about Susan. It's about her being a big eater. Although household expenses are separate from my son's and his wife's, I am concerned about Susan's weight. At 40, she weighs 215 pounds. In the teenage or 20s, it might be less worrying. But in the 40s, lifestyle diseases become a concern. However, it's difficult to bring up such a delicate topic, even between women. Despite my concern, watching Susan enjoy her meals made it hard for me to speak up. But one day, my worry became a reality. It seems something came up in the health checkup at work, and I need to go to the hospital for further tests. I'm not looking forward to it. Saying so, she presented the health checkup report to me and my son. It says immediate medical treatment required, my son exclaimed in surprise, and I peered into the health checkup report. It instructed immediate specialized medical treatment. There was blood in the urine, requiring medical intervention. Both my son and I were shocked, but Susan seemed unaware of the gravity of the situation. This is troublesome. A colleague of mine also needed a recheck because of high blood sugar levels. Susan spoke lightly. But rechecks and needing treatment are different things, aren't they? It seemed like his words didn't reach Susan's ears. Anyway, let's get you checked out at the hospital on your next day off. I'll come with you. Sorry, but I have work, so I can't make it. When my son and I said this, Susan responded with a smile. And it's a bit much to come to the hospital with me. It's not like I've got a serious injury. You both are overreacting, Mother and Joshua. Don't say it's overreacting. Please get it properly checked. The son stumbled over his words, looking confused. Without saying anything more to Susan, I immediately made an appointment with the urology department. A few days later, I decided to accompany Susan to the urologist to support her. During the examination, detailed questions and tests were conducted, and the doctor told Susan, "Please have a family member join us. Then I'll explain in detail." Upon hearing this from the doctor, Susan called me from the waiting room where I was reading a magazine. The doctor said he wants to explain to a family member. "Mother, can you come to the examination room with me?" I was confused about what was happening, wondering, why do I have to be there too? While waiting to be called into the examination room, Susan's smartphone rang. It's a call from a friend. "Sorry, can you listen to the doctor first?" Saying this, Susan hurried outside. I entered the examination room, and the doctor asked me, "Are you her mother?" "I'm her husband's mother." Understood. As a family member, I'll explain Miss Susan's condition. The doctor then explained Susan's detailed medical condition. To be frank, this is terminal kidney cancer. Her life expectancy is at most 6 months. I didn't want to shock her, so I called a family member. Stunned by the unexpected diagnosis, I was lost for words. "Is there no treatment?" I asked the doctor with a strained voice, but he looked troubled. If it had been discovered earlier, surgery to remove the cancer cells or chemotherapy might have been effective. But at this stage, no treatment method is likely to be effective. Shocked by his words, I left the examination room and slumped into the waiting room. Sweat formed on my forehead, and my heart raced. Susan finished her call with her friend and tried to speak to me, but her voice didn't reach me. I was lost in thought. Susan has terminal kidney cancer, with only 6 months to live. Tears welled up in my eyes at the reality. Holding back my tears, I returned home, wondering how to tell Susan and my son. That's when my son asked, "Mom, are you okay? You don't look well." "There's something important I need to discuss. Let's talk in the living room after Susan falls asleep." My son nodded silently to my words. Late at night, when Susan was asleep, I told my son about the doctor's diagnosis of terminal kidney cancer and a life expectancy of 6 months. He was shocked, covering his face with his hands, and remained silent for a while. How many minutes passed, I'm not sure. After a long silence, my son finally spoke. "Does Susan know about this?" "No. I was the only one the doctor told." When I answered, my son showed a determined look and nodded, relieved. "If she doesn't know, let's keep it that way. What matters most is that Susan spends her time happily and smiling." I agreed with my son's words, nodding repeatedly. Fortunately, Susan seemed to have no pain or uncomfortable symptoms, even as the cancer progressed and her life dwindled. I thought it was best if Susan could live happily and smiling. So I decided not to tell her the truth unless she brought up feeling unwell. However, the next morning, Susan approached me. "What were you and Joshua talking about last night?" As I froze in surprise, Susan displayed a mischievous smile. "You don't have to hide it. I heard everything." "You did. You heard it." I was about to honestly discuss her illness and life expectancy when Susan spoke first. "I can't believe you have kidney cancer, Mother. Only 6 months to live. That must have been a shock. That's why you look so down after leaving the hospital?" Stunned, I could only say, as Susan lightly patted my shoulder. "Please don't be downhearted. I'll take care of you till the end. Let's spend peaceful times together." "No, that's not," I began, confused, but my words were drowned out as Susan hurriedly said, "Oh no, it's getting late. I'll be late for work," and rushed out of the house. Did she misunderstand that I have only 6 months to live? I must tell her the truth. Thinking this, I waited for Susan's return, but she didn't come home until late that night. It was past 10 p.m., and my son was staring at the clock in irritation. "It's this late already? Where could Susan be going?" At that moment, the front door opened, and Susan came home. Sorry. I lost track of time having fun with friends." Susan, who appeared drunk, had a bright red face. She entered the house with a smile and staggered down the hallway. Then she went to bed without even taking a bath. The son glanced at a piece of paper visible from Susan's bag and was shocked. "What's this?" "A receipt from a members-only bar. Spent $1,000 there?" "Where did the money come from?" The son, reprimanding me, suddenly checked the savings I had hurriedly stored in the dresser. I found that the envelope, which had been carefully hidden with $3,000, was empty. Overwhelmed with shock and despair, I sat down on the floor. Desperately, my son shouted at Susan, "Hey, don't sleep, explain properly." The next morning, Susan did not wake up even as her work time approached. So I called her workplace to report her absence. Joshua went to work, and I went shopping. It seemed Susan had woken up while we were out and left, returning late at night after hanging out with friends again. Susan was buying a lot of designer goods, eating at upscale restaurants, and drinking expensive wines at members-only bars. Upon returning home, Susan would immediately fall asleep, and the next morning, she often struggled to wake up, leading to continued absences from work. After several days of this behavior, Susan's boss was extremely angry. "If this continues, dismissal is not out of the question," I was told harshly when I called to report Susan's absence on her behalf. But even when I tried to wake her in the morning, Susan showed no signs of getting up. Instead, she would leave the house in the afternoon to buy expensive brands and dine at high-end restaurants before returning home. I wondered where she was getting the money to sustain this lavish lifestyle. One day, I couldn't find my passbook and seal, and when I searched the house, I found them in Susan's closet. As I trembled with anger, Susan approached me from behind. "Mother, please don't search through my closet without permission." Her voice was different than before, low and cold. "But Susan, you used my passbook without permission to take money, didn't you?" I confronted her, though frightened. However, Susan justified her actions confidently. "Once you're gone, the money will belong to us anyway. I just used it a bit early." Conflicted by Susan's assertive attitude, I still felt doubts about what she said. What should be of concern is not my life expectancy, but rather her future. Moreover, since I'm still alive, it's wrong for her to freely use my money. I wanted to tell her about the illness and the limited time I had left, but I still needed the courage to do so. Seeing me silent, Susan probably thought she had the upper hand. Since then, she began to show a mean side that I had never seen before. Susan lost her job and started enjoying a luxurious life with my money. Each time we faced each other, she would throw harsh words at me. "No, Mother, you haven't gone to heaven yet. What about the inheritance? When do I get it?" Susan was enjoying a lavish life using my bank account funds without permission. Despite feeling angry at her rude remarks and behavior, I still worried about Susan's future and health. She spent her days drinking at upscale members-only bars, sometimes to the point of passing out, and enjoyed meals at expensive barbecue and sushi restaurants. Susan always loved to eat, but lately, she was overeating. Despite being diagnosed with terminal kidney cancer, Susan was energetic and active. However, it was clear that such an unhealthy lifestyle could negatively affect her health. One day, when I met Susan again, she was even more harsh than before. "Mother, no matter how much you glare, it's my freedom to use the money, right? An old person with only 6 months to live won't use the money in their remaining life anyway. Actually, the person with only 6 months to live is you, not me." In a moment of anger, I blurted out the truth. What are you talking about? Actually, the one with terminal kidney cancer and a prognosis of 6 months to live is not me. But you, Susan?" As I calmly revealed the truth, Susan turned pale with shock. "Lately, I've been feeling pain in my back and waist, and my legs have been swelling. I thought it was just from drinking too much. To think that I have kidney cancer? And only 6 months to live." It seems Susan was already experiencing symptoms. The 6-month prognosis was given 3 months ago, so to be precise, you have about 3 months left. If you have symptoms, you must take care of your body." Susan apologized, crying, "I'm sorry. I misunderstood and thought it was you, and I've been harsh. Please forgive me for everything and help me." Susan's apology couldn't reverse her illness. I was at a loss for how to respond when Joshua spoke up. "Apologizing now is pointless. I've warned you many times not to be harsh to Mom and not to use her money for your fun." Saying this, Joshua glared at Susan, holding divorce papers in his hand. "You're joking. Divorce? I only have 3 months to live." Joshua sighed, and Susan collapsed right there. "Sure, we might end up separating eventually anyway. But I can't stand to see Mom suffer like this. That's why I won't hesitate to divorce you." In response to Joshua's calm declaration of divorce, Susan broke down and shouted, "Don't talk about divorce. I want to be with you until the end." "All right, but there's a condition. You must repay all the money you spent without Mom's permission, and treat Mom kindly. If you can do that, I'll consider canceling the divorce." It seemed Joshua was well aware of Susan's mistreatment and unauthorized spending of Beth's money, repeatedly warning her. I felt that Joshua no longer had any love left for Susan, who was hurting me. His decision not to divorce seemed motivated by compassion for Susan, who only had a short time left to live. "And I'm sorry for spending the money without permission. I want to repay it, but I'm penniless since I lost my job." Instead, Susan's parents stepped in, arranging to repay the full amount she had spent. Following this, Susan's condition rapidly deteriorated, and 3 months later, she became bedridden. She suffered from severe loss of appetite, nausea, and abdominal pain. Despite her condition, Susan continued to apologize to me. "I'm so sorry for misunderstanding and causing trouble for you and Joshua. I truly regret it." In her final moments, Susan left these words, ending her 42-year life. As I was sorting through Susan's belongings after her passing, I found several years' worth of health checkup reports. They were marked re-examination needed, but it seemed Susan hadn't taken them seriously. If Susan had paid more attention to her health and avoided wasteful spending, she might have had a more fulfilling life. This experience has made me deeply aware of the importance of relationships and health. When my time comes, I want to be someone who is thanked by those who see me off. Despite our short time together, I believe I have learned many lessons from my time with Susan.